welcome. You may wonder why the cake is on the table. Well, it's my birthday, and this is the executive dialogue. Today on the show, we'll be talking about hyperbaric medicine and the diving sector in Nigeria. I have with me an executive in the industry, a doctor, a hyperbaric doctor, also a diver. What a combination. And so we have Dr. Adesola Osidipe here in the studio with us today, and he's the president Underwaters Hyperbaric Medicine Practitioners Society. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me. Happy birthday.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Do you like my cake?
It's beautiful.
All right. I hope you have it bite before you go.
I look forward to it.
All right. So let's talk about the diving sector.
Yeah.
First of all, it's amazing to find a doctor who is a hyperbaric doctor and at the same time a diver. What inspired that?
Well, it's not commonplace in Nigeria, but all other parts of the world, you'd find doctors who have some kind of background in diving, whether as a recreational sport, scientific, or commercial.
Okay.
I think the reason why I wanted to be a diver and a doctor was because I wanted to be able to add value. So I didn't want to just be treating patients from a classroom perspective. I wanted to have the experience of it so that when my divers or my patients came to me with a complaint, it was easier for me to understand what the problem was.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
But it's not even often you find people specialize in that area here.
Yes.
So how did that come up in?
Well, I think I was just bored of the traditional practices in Nigeria of being a pediatrician or a surgeon. Not that these practices are not noble, they are, but I just wanted something with a little bit more.
So you're a bit more adventurous. Okay, let's, the diving sector in Nigeria, you know, when you ask the layman, if you ask me, I'll just tell you, well, you jump into the water, you come out.
Yes.
Is that it? Or is there more to diving?
Well, the diving is going underwater.
Okay.
Going into pressure.
How far?
Once you are below 1 to 10 meters, you're exposed to pressure.
Okay.
The deeper you go, the more pressure you're exposed to.
Okay.
When we talk about diving, we talk about occupational medicine, especially with regards working underwater.
Okay.
So diving medicine involves treating work-related illnesses and non-work-related illnesses of military, commercial, and recreational divers.
Okay.
Military, like you would have in the Nigerian Navy. Commercial, like you would have in the maritime oil and gas sector.
Okay.
Recreational, we don't have a strong recreational diving base in Nigeria, but in some countries you do, where they use divers for aquariums, they use divers for archaeology, they use divers for scientific diving. So there's a lot involved with diving depending on which area you're working in.
Okay, so do you think that the diving sector here is coming of age? Because, you know, it's not common career. It's not the common thing to see.
Yeah.
We know that we have the Niger Delta swimmers who actually stage as divers, but not the professional ones.
Yeah.
You know, so do we have more people getting into diving now?
Diving is a profession. It's always existed in Nigeria.
Okay.
But it's a niche. I mean, the first diver we have in Nigeria is Chief Alfred Detespief, who was the first diver, you know, from the Nigerian Navy, former governor of Rivers State. He built a diving school in Rivers.
Okay.
We don't know where that diving school is now, unfortunately. Then there was another diving school that came after that, which was PTI, where a lot of divers, Nigerian divers, trained. Diving itself is not exclusive to anywhere. You have divers who dive in the Kainji Dam. Now, those are skilled divers. Now, if you want to talk about people also exposed to pressure, you talk about the guys who mine sand, the sand miners. They're pretty much divers, but in a very, very unregulated industry.
Industry.
You know, overseas, if you want to dive to mine sand, they lump them into the dredging industry. Okay, so for a long time, it's been an expatriate-dominated industry because, one, there was no skilled manpower. There was not enough skilled manpower. Two, it was poorly regulated.
Okay.
Three, people were not really taking up interest because there's that notion that once you're black, you don't like water. But there are a lot of people who like water. You'll find them within the coastlines of Nigeria, especially, or who live along river banks. They like to call them water people.
Yeah.
You understand? So a lot of those people took diving. They took interest in diving, and some of them went through the research of where they could train and get certified and make a profession out of it. If you have so many operations going on and with just a handful of doctors, how many people can you take care of?
There was a point in time we heard that divers were not allowed to practice if they were not IMCA certified.
Yes.
So when you say skilled divers, are they
Yes.
IMCA certified?
So basically, technology is evolving. So in other words, training has to evolve. Like I said, there have been schools in Nigeria where there was training for diving. But Nigeria, on the global scene, has not advanced in its training.
Okay.
And the training, the recognized training right now is International Marine Contractors Association, IMCA. So coming from an oil and gas industry where safety and compliance are critical to the success of projects, the oil and gas industry maintained that if you wanted to dive, you had to have IMCA. So you had a lot of people who had been trained by PTI going overseas to do conversion courses to IMCA, and that gave them entry into the oil and gas industry. That's not to say that the people who are trained in PTI are not qualified. It's just because of compliance. Some people see a certain certificate as having superiority over others. There's a preference for IMCA-trained divers.
Okay, the diving sector, you had mentioned regulation, you know, but I wonder as to how the economic advantage that gives Nigeria, you know, if we were to embrace, if government was to pay more attention to the sector. I don't know if you're of the opinion, but several people have said that minimal attention is given the sector. So if government were to pay attention to the sector, what areas would we be looking at and what gains would we profit?
Well, government is paying attention.
Okay.
I mean, we have the Nigerian Content Act, in brief, which was passed in 2010, which has dramatically improved Nigerian participation in oil and gas
sector.
And they're looking at how they can expand that to other areas. Recently, we have a Nigerian diving regulation that was passed in 2018.
Okay.
It still needs a lot of advocacy. We need to push it. We need to drive it. We need to create the awareness.
Okay.
So it's not a journey of one day. Some of us are in it for the long haul. We want to see this industry grow. We want to see more Nigerian participation. We want to see more doctors. I mean, when I first came back, I'm IMCA trained. It was just me in Nigeria. In fact, in the entire Western Coast.
Wow.
But now we have a society that can boast of 12. Okay? So for us, that's good. And this society is backed by law. Also, even the Nigerian divers, they have a union, the National Association for Professional Divers. They're also backed by law. And with the support of all the other systems, and if you can get the right intersectoral collaboration, you can see diving being a well-positioned industry that could drive capacity and also be a means of generating income for the average Nigerian.
Okay. When we talk about, let's go proper to medicine now, the medical angle.
Yeah.
You know, one begins to wonder what the challenges of the regular diver, the health challenges of the regular diver could be.
Yeah.
You know, because we've heard of hyperbaric chambers, we've heard of bends, you
Yes.
know.
Yes.
The layman doesn't understand all this, but
Yes.
what actually necessitates the need for improved medical practice or diving?
Okay, so the bends. Let's start with the bends, which is the most popular condition
Okay.
that divers are known for. The bends are a result of gas, because when you breathe air, you dive with air, and air is 79% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. So the deeper you go and the longer you stay, you consume the oxygen. But the inert gas, which is usually the nitrogen and other gases, slowly soak up into your body. So they soak up from skin to subcute, all the way through muscle into bone. Yeah.
Wow.
So obviously, we work with what they call Boyle's law. Okay, which is the relationship between pressure and volume, which is telling you that the deeper you go, the more pressure you're exposed to, the volume of the gas tends to shrink.
Okay.
So you have all this gas that's packed into you, packed into you. It's like a bottle of Coke that is gassed up.
Wow.
So if you came up quickly and not slowly, you have all that gas bubble out of your tissues and into your bloodstream.
Wow.
And if these bubbles get to your brain, for example, or your spine or anywhere, they could affect that part of the body. If it were your brain, for example, you would have stroke syndromes. If it were your spine, for example, you could be paralyzed. The paralysis is what came to be as bends, because when people came out, they always bent.
Okay.
So they called it he has the bends,
Okay.
which is actually called decompression
And I
illness.
hear once you have the bend and you're not taken care of immediately, you
Exactly.
can't practice anymore.
So
Is that it?
it depends on how severe the bends
Okay.
is. So that's why we need things like decompression chambers.
Okay.
So what the decompression chambers basically do is they take you back to pressure and shrink the bubbles. But then you now have oxygen being pumped, 100% oxygen being pumped into the chambers, which causes a differential in gases and then allows the nitrogen to be off-gassed and then keeps the body well neutralized with oxygen. So decompression chambers onshore, we have some, but we don't have a real hyperbaric medical facility that's being manned by doctors. So more often than not, the doctors have to work offshore at the site and treat the divers on site during the operation. But if you have so many operations going on and with just a handful of doctors, how many people can you take care of? That's one. The chamber itself has other applications. And that's when we now separate the difference between diving and hyperbaric medicine. So hyperbaric medicine now involves the use of that chamber to treat other medical conditions.
Okay.
So you can use it for sickle cell crisis.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you could use it for diabetic foot. You could use it for carbon monoxide poisoning.
Oh.
You could use it for so many other things, you know. But unfortunately, Nigerians have not yet understood or accepted the use of hyperbaric chambers for treating these medical conditions.
Why is that so?
I think that's so because the chamber is very expensive. And most of the doctors who have tried to enter this practice cannot really afford such heavy-duty equipment. If you're a military diver, for example, and you want to decommission an underwater mine, and they're telling you cut blue, but then you have color blindness and you're seeing red.
So what is the society of your organization doing?
Well, our society, one, is creating the awareness,
Okay.
Especially in the diving sector. We're driving knowledge. We're driving the awareness with the regulatory industries, with the Ministry of Labor.
Okay.
with the Department of Petroleum Resources, with the IOCs, the international oil companies. We are working hand in hand with NAPROD.
Okay.
We're working hand in hand with the Nigerian Navy, and some other organizations who take diving as something that they would love to see blossom. So right now, the regulation has just been passed. Okay, eventually they're going to set up a council, an advisory council. That advisory council will be in charge of creating the awareness.
Okay.
It will be the authority backed by that regulation to speak to people on diving, especially people who have the diving companies, for example.
Yeah.
They will be in charge of, they will be supervisory to make sure that diving is performed in a safe manner. The advisory council would also be in charge of auditing accidents, for example. So if there was an accident, they'll come in to do investigations and come out with a report.
Okay. I presume that with just 12 members
Yes.
who are doctors,
Yes.
diving doctors,
Yes.
that may actually not be enough for the industry.
Yes.
So, is there a campaign
Yes.
ongoing in that area?
For one, divers are supposed to be fit before they go to work. So diving medicine involves certification of fitness. It also involves providing operational medical support to a diving location. Certification of fitness, you have the guys who want to start diving as a career, so they have the initial medical examination they do. Then they're supposed to have an annual.
Okay.
And they're supposed to have a periodic.
Okay.
This is supposed to be the normal practice across board in most professions. Sometimes you have people who work and they don't go to work with fitness certificate.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do diving, it's very critical. For example, you want to go underwater and they've not checked you for color blindness. If you're if you're a military diver, for example, and you want to decommission an underwater mine, and they're telling you cut blue, but then you have color blindness and you're seeing red.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
Or you are a professional commercial diver, and your ability to be dexterous, your ability to have a good to have good lungs or to have a good heart, to be able to do the work is non-existent. So fitness is very, very critical to what we do. And then also supporting the operation, during the diving operation, is also very critical. Like, what are emergency response plans? Okay, what are our safety plans? If you had an emergency response, how would you respond? You know, if you had an emergency, how would you respond? If you had an accident, how would you respond? All those things are part of the training of a diving doctor. When I was in Gabon, I was on a job that had an accident. We had a bailout bottle, the cylinder of a diver, explode. Yes, and we had to evacuate 3 divers.
Wow.
How do you respond to that? How do you evacuate 3 divers? You understand what I'm saying? These are all the things that are involved in our practice, especially if you're in a remote site. You're offshore. How do you get the chopper in? How do you treat these guys before the chopper arrives? Where does the chopper take them to? So that's what we mean when we talk about operational.
So it's actually industry practice that as long as divers are going to site,
you should have
a doctor must be around them.
Preferably, it depends on the team size.
Okay.
Okay, or the nature of the diving. Okay. So if you were offshore and you were diving on a vessel, because diving takes place off a vessel, and you have a POB, a number of persons on board that exceed a certain number, it's pretty much a community.
Yes,
it's pretty much a community, and you have to treat the people on there. It's not just diving. They could have diarrhea. Everybody gets diarrhea, and then how do they work? You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Or everybody catches a flu inside there. How do they work?
They go to the first aid box.
They go to the first aid. So some of these vessels they have a fully kitted hospital on board
Okay.
that is manned by a doctor.
Okay. The world now
Yeah.
is tackling the challenge of coronavirus.
Yes.
How does this affect the diving sector?
I think it's that's not a question that's skewed to just diving alone. It's a question for Nigerians, the Nigerian health sector, and I say it starts with leadership. Leadership taking account, taking responsibility, and everyone in this instance is a leader, and it's everyone's responsibility to do the right thing. Diving and maritime oil and gas industry, it requires expat skills, and so you have a lot of foreign travel. So I think companies need to keep up with the updates, avoid bringing in people who are coming from high-risk areas. I think it's going to affect it because it's going to affect the industry because there's a limit to travel. It's going to affect business as a whole because oil and gas, especially, for every one person you employ in oil and gas, you need 10 people to support them. Wow. You need doctors, you need transport, you need security, you need food, and the list goes on. So if one area shuts down, it's definitely going to affect all the other. Yeah, so it will affect, and I do hope we're able to pull out of this.
We sure hope we come out of
scratch.
it.
Yeah.
We sure hope we come out of it. Thank you so much for joining us. This is all we can take on Executive Dialogue today.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for being a part of my birthday today.
Congratulations. Happy birthday again.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We've been talking to Dr. Osidipe, who is the president of the Underwater Hyperbaric Medicine Practitioners Society. And I'm sure you had a good time with us today. Until we come your way again on Executive Dialogue, I am Izine Azuna. Stay blessed.